Well, Donald Trump is demanding something he has never seen. Donald Trump is demanding something no president in his lifetime has ever achieved: unconditional surrender. On Friday morning at 8:50 a.m., Donald Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender in a social media post. The last time the United States of America accepted an unconditional surrender, it took an atomic bomb to get it. In fact, two of them. After President Harry Truman became the first and only person in world history to use nuclear weapons against Japan, first in Hiroshima and 3 days later in Nagasaki, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender. Harry Truman had already accepted Germany's unconditional surrender in World War II 3 months earlier. No American president has demanded or accepted an unconditional surrender at the end of an American war since the year before Donald Trump was born, 81 years ago at the end of World War II. Anyone who has witnessed a war during Donald Trump's lifetime knows that the unconditional surrender of Iran is impossible. Everyone on Wall Street knew that over the weekend when markets began to adjust negatively to an anticipated long-term Trump war in pursuit of the impossible: unconditional surrender. And so, of course, oil prices skyrocketed. The stock market crashed, and Donald Trump today offered his unconditional surrender. Donald Trump is the first American wartime president ruled by the stock market and the oil market. In a phone call with the CBS News reporter today, Donald Trump said, "I think the war is very complete." He said that during stock market trading in the hope of preventing a collapse. Donald Trump didn't mention unconditional surrender again today. And because it was Donald Trump who said unconditional surrender on Friday morning, we knew there was no chance of even Donald Trump holding on to the nonsensical demand of unconditional surrender. When President Franklin Delano Roosevelt announced publicly during World War II that the only peace terms that the United States of America would accept from Germany and Japan was unconditional surrender, the world knew that Franklin Roosevelt meant those two words, and everyone in the world, other than the German and Japanese regimes, knew that they could trust those presidential words as fact, as a prediction of what exactly was going to happen. The world knew from that moment on how World War II was going to end. They didn't know how long it was going to last, but they knew World War II was going to end in unconditional surrender because the President of the United States said so. And now the world knows the words of the current President of the United States have no meaning at all. 31 hours after Donald Trump demanded unconditional surrender, in another social media post, Donald Trump said, "We've already won!" exclamation point. Donald Trump doesn't even pay attention to the words of Donald Trump. Unconditional surrender Friday morning. We've already won Saturday afternoon. No unconditional surrender. As oil prices were skyrocketing over the weekend, Donald Trump said that higher oil prices were, quote, "a very small price to pay for USA." Well, it is certainly a smaller price to pay than the lives of the members of the American military that have been lost in Donald Trump's first days of Donald Trump's war. Donald Trump made no attempt to look presidential, since he doesn't actually know what that looks like, when he attended the dignified transfer of the bodies of the first 6 soldiers killed in his war. And he didn't remember those soldiers the next day when he wrote about what he called, quote, "a very small price to pay for USA." Donald Trump ended his public day today by stepping up to a microphone at one of his golf resorts in Florida, the kind of place where no other president has ever set foot on the 10th day of a war. From the start, Donald Trump has refused to say how long his war would last. Donald Trump had to do that because he knew he might have to surrender at any time. And now that his surrender has come, he can claim that it's because his war is going so well that he can just end it. And that is, of course, exactly what he did today.
We're ahead of our initial timeline by a lot. It's going to be ended soon.
Are you thinking this week it will be over?
No,
Are you talking
but soon.
about days?
I think soon.
Okay, and with respect
Very
to
soon.
Donald Trump's day began today with the news that Iran has a new supreme leader who was the son of the supreme leader who was killed on the first day of Donald Trump's war. So Donald Trump has traded an 86-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei for a 56-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei, who is reported to be even more hardline than his father, which makes Donald Trump's Friday morning idea of unconditional surrender even more impossible. And when Donald Trump demanded unconditional surrender with an exclamation point on Friday morning, he also, in the same social media post, demanded the selection of a great and acceptable leader in Iran. Today, Donald Trump said he was disappointed in the choice of Iran's new supreme leader. That was his word, disappointed. But Donald Trump did not dare to repeat his demand for unconditional surrender of that new supreme leader. Before stepping up to the microphone at his golf resort today, Donald Trump made phone calls to individual members of the media in a desperate attempt to communicate something positive to the stock market, the real bosses of Donald Trump's war. One of those calls was to Fox's Brian Kilmeade, who quoted Donald Trump on Fox and Friends this morning, telling him, quote, "These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. Show some guts." 20% of the world's oil shipments pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which has now become far too dangerous for safe passage. Shipping traffic has dropped by at least 90% in the strait or more. And Donald Trump's solution to that is for everyone on those oil tankers to just be brave, like him. Donald Trump wants the captains and crews of those ships to be brave and put themselves in the line of fire, put themselves in harm's way. Just call their families at home around the world and tell them, wish me luck. We are bravely going through the strait today because Donald Trump told us to show some guts. Donald Trump wants the non-combatants on commercial vessels to do something that no one in the Trump clan has ever done. Enter a war zone. Show some guts. How about 19-year-old Barron Trump, who is turning 20 in 11 days? As I reported on this program last week, all four of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's sons served in the military in World War II, while their father served as commander-in-chief until his death in office weeks before Germany's unconditional surrender. It was unthinkable then for a president's son not to serve in that president's war. And World War II was not a war of Franklin Roosevelt's choosing. We entered World War II only after Japan declared war on the United States and then Germany declared war on the United States. But because World War II was already underway in Europe in 1939, John Kennedy decided not to go to Yale Law School after his Harvard graduation and instead joined the Navy months before the United States entered World War II. Jack Kennedy, the future brother, the future president's older brother, Joe Kennedy, dropped out of Harvard Law School to become a pilot in World War II. Joe Kennedy's plane went down and he was killed in action in Europe. Such was the call of duty in those days that the sons of presidents, the sons of cabinet members, the sons of ambassadors, the sons of generals, along with the sons of laborers and factory workers, all showed some guts, as Donald Trump would put it, and rushed toward the sound of the guns. In fact, almost all Harvard students dropped out during World War II to serve in the military. So what about Barron Trump? Why hasn't he left college, like almost every Harvard student did during World War II, to fight in his father Donald Trump's war? And I mention Harvard specifically because that is the institution of higher learning in America that Donald Trump seems to hate the most. It is the institution that seems to fill him with a raging jealousy for reasons known only to his pathologically insecure psyche. Of the 1,000 students, the 1,000 students admitted to the Harvard class of 1944 before World War II started, only 19 graduated in 1944. That's how much America's universities emptied out as students followed what they felt was their call of duty into war. No one, Donald Trump, no one in the Trump family has ever done anything like that in the entire history of the Klan. Not one Trump. Not one. No Trump has ever attended a military funeral of a family member, and now it's Barron Trump's turn to refuse to go to war while his father sends young men and women his age into that war. Why doesn't Barron Trump do what all those Harvard students did during World War II? Why doesn't he leave college now and go join his father's war? Why doesn't Barron Trump donate his services as a crew member on an oil tanker in the Strait of Hormuz? He doesn't even have to join the military for that. His father said there's nothing to be afraid of. Does his mother agree with that? Does she think there's nothing to be afraid of for her son on one of those oil tankers? Donald Trump said these ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, let's prove there's nothing to be afraid of by putting Barron on the deck of one of those ships, because we know the only place Donald Trump would allow Barron to go, the only place where Barron Trump's mother would ever allow him to go, is a place where there's nothing to be afraid of. Donald Trump's other sons appear to be playing their part in their father's war by trying to become war profiteers. There was nothing more loathsome in the United States during World War II than war profiteering. Harry Truman became president of the United States because of his crusade against war profiteering. Senator Harry Truman studied war contracts more than any other senator, searching for illegitimate profiteering. He eventually became the chairman of a special Senate committee to investigate war profiteering. Senator Truman's investigations were at first a minor irritant to President Franklin Roosevelt, who was worried about anything that might inhibit America's industrial giants like the auto industry, which was then converting their factories for the manufacture of aircraft and tanks. But soon President Roosevelt came to appreciate Senator Truman's policing of the war contracts and Senator Truman's condemnations of any war profiteers that his investigations exposed. Imagine Donald Trump appreciating congressional investigations of potential corruption in the war contracts that he awards, he personally awards, he personally interferes with and delivers to the companies he wants to deliver those awards to. Franklin Roosevelt actually appreciated Harry Truman's investigations and condemnations of war profiteering so much that President Roosevelt chose Harry Truman to run with him as his vice presidential nominee as President Roosevelt ran for his final re-election campaign during World War II. Harry Truman then became president after President Roosevelt died in office. Harry Truman would hate what the Wall Street Journal is now reporting about Donald Trump and his sons. The Wall Street Journal reports Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., the president's sons, are backing a new drone company that is vying to meet fresh demand from the Pentagon and fill a hole left by the administration's ban on new Chinese drones in the U.S. Power Us, a drone roll-up company based in West Palm Beach, Florida, is merging with a publicly traded golf course holding company backed by the Trumps. Power Us executives said investors in the deal include one of the Trumps' investment vehicles, American Ventures, and Unusual Machines, a drone components company where Donald Trump Jr. is a shareholder and advisory board member. The deal brings deeper involvement by the Trump family into a multi-billion-dollar sector that has new opportunities for growth following changes imposed by the Trump administration. Those include the Pentagon's emphasis on large-scale rapid adoption of small drones. When Donald Trump started his war, he called it a war. He called it a war multiple times, and that is what it is. Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense also called it a war when the war began, which he especially loved doing since he falsely calls himself the Secretary of War. But now that Donald Trump realizes that Americans don't like war, and maybe being reminded that he campaigned against war when he was running for president, Donald Trump is twisting the language to avoid the word war.
I mean, this was an excursion that a lot of people wouldn't have done.
An excursion. That's his latest description of his war today. An excursion. Donald Trump finds new ways to dishonor the war dead. A silly hat, and now an excursion. It's one thing to die in a war whose objective the president cannot explain. Americans have done that before and have done it since Vietnam. But to die in an excursion, to call it an excursion, before the families have even had the funerals, to struggle to find language that demeans those soldiers' sacrifice in service to his desperate political needs is a uniquely Trumpian moment in the American presidency. Tonight, there was another dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base for Army Sergeant Benjamin Pennington, 26 years old, of Glendale, Kentucky. Donald Trump wasn't there. Donald Trump did not attend. But he did attend a fundraiser for House Speaker Mike Johnson today in Florida at Donald Trump's golf resort there. And if you're paging through the history books trying to find the president who went to a political fundraiser at a golf club on the 10th day of a war, you can stop right now. Only the guy who said, show some guts, there's nothing to be afraid of, would show his guts by going to a fundraiser instead of the second dignified transfer of his war of choosing. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will join us after this break. Today, global oil prices continue to surge as Donald Trump's war with Iran continues to disrupt energy markets and the global economy. Oil briefly spiked to nearly $120 a barrel overnight before coming back down during the day. The world's largest economies held an emergency meeting of the G7 today to discuss whether they may need to release emergency reserves to stabilize the oil and gas markets. CNBC reports about 20% of the world's oil supply is being disrupted by Donald Trump's war, with traffic in the Strait of Hormuz just south of Iran at a standstill. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. The outcome with the oil markets was one of the predictable effects of this war, but Donald Trump seems to have been taken by surprise by it.
Yeah, and the two big winners from this big surprise that he was the only person not to see are his big oil billionaire cronies who've seen the price of their product go through the roof. One of the things that's notable is that American oil producers who are selling oil to Americans raised their prices when foreign issues change the international oil market. Their cost of production hasn't changed, so they're going to make a fortune. And of course, the other big winner is Vladimir Putin, who is winning not only because Trump released him from sanctions so that he can get more revenue. Oil prices are up, so the spigot of money to keep his war machine against Ukraine going is flipped wide open. And the arms that we have been providing to Ukraine are now being spent in Iran, and that lowers the overall supply, throw in other needs. And I'm sure we'll shortly see Hegseth and others saying, well, we'd love to help Ukraine, but we simply don't have the war material any longer. So Putin's number one goal has been to succeed at annexing Ukraine by violence. And he's also the one person in the world to whom President Trump insists on showing submissiveness, and not try to be the dominant person in the relationship. He's the submissive in this relationship. So there is pain all around economically from the decision Trump evidently didn't see the consequences of, except in those two corners of Trump allies.
So Donald Trump spent some time on the phone with Vladimir Putin today. What could that possibly have been about?
Yeah, nothing good for Ukraine, just to begin with. And as you know, there is a long connection between Trump and Russia. Trump likes to call it the Trump-Russia hoax. But as you know better than anyone, Lawrence, when Trump uses the word hoax, it's his verbal tell for something that is absolutely true. So Trump-Russia has been a long standing thing. We do not fully understand it yet. There's also a Russia-Epstein connection that we don't fully understand yet, which makes Trump-Russia and Trump-Epstein more of a complicated triangle of Trump, Russia, Epstein. But I would be very interested to know what took place in that conversation between him and President Putin. Nothing good for Ukraine, I'm sure.
So Donald Trump never announced either an objective or a timeline at the beginning of his war, which seems to leave it open to him to decide exactly when his war ends, which might mean that the stock market will tell him when his war ends.
Yeah, I think it's become his style to try to play things fast and loose and keep everybody guessing, which is fine if you are, running a casino or selling yourself as a TV host on an entertainment show. But when you've got the reputation of the United States, when you've got the lives of American service members, and when you've got massive economic consequences for American families all on the line, you'd like to think that he would have put the effort in to thinking it through a little bit.
And as we go forward, Donald Trump's notion of unconditional surrender, I'm sure he'll never bring it up again, and it'll just be forgotten. But he obviously has no idea what that even looks like. But we're certainly not any closer to that impossible dream after the new leadership choice in Iran.
No, in fact, Iran has had an enormous amount of destruction wreaked on its traditional military apparatus. There's no doubt about that. But clearly the spirit of the Iranian extremists has not been broken when they put the Ayatollah's even more aggressive and conservative son in as his replacement. There's no sign of looking unconditionally surrendering there. And they have operatives all around the world. They have drone technology that is very inexpensive. And believe it or not, there's been news reporting by the Washington Post that Vladimir Putin, the Russians, have been helping the Iranians target American service members. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that came up in the conversation between Trump and Putin, that Putin is actually helping Iran kill our service members. Ordinarily, that would be the kind of thing that would irritate an American president, maybe even anger him, maybe even put some real pressure on Putin to knock it off. But whatever he has on Putin, that has not happened.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for starting off our discussions tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, the Trump Justice Department has released more of the Epstein files as it's required to do under the law passed by our next guest, Congressman Ro Khanna. That's next. Donald Trump's Justice Department released more of the Epstein files, including notes from FBI interviews with a woman who said she was sexually assaulted by Donald Trump when she was 13 years old. It is unclear how fully the FBI investigated her claims, and Donald Trump has denied any wrongdoing linked to Epstein. According to an MS Now analysis of the 20 newly released documents, which comprise fewer than 1,000 pages, notwithstanding the small size of the production and the Justice Department's repeated assurances that it would protect victim safety and privacy, MS Now found the first and or last names of at least 21 known or suspected survivors. Some of these names were left unredacted multiple times. Epstein survivor Danielle Bensky said this on this network earlier today.
We've had so many conversations with the Democrats, the Republicans. We're in offices and we're constantly saying how important the redaction process is and getting it right is. And you would think that after twice already, especially after the last release where, our lawyers talk to them, everybody's, there's been so much conversation around this topic. And then to see it yet again on Friday or Thursday, I believe it was, is just, it's really beyond, frustrating puts it so mildly. Yeah. It's gutting.
In a statement, House Oversight Committee Democrats said, "Let's be clear, this White House cover-up is ongoing. Millions of pages still remain concealed from the public and our committee. We will get answers when Pam Bondi appears before our committee under oath." Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee. Let me begin with what we just heard from yet another survivor about the redactions problem. I don't even know what to call it, that this Trump Justice Department could continue to put out material that does not have their names redacted.
It's heartless. And these survivors are reliving their trauma. They're being victimized a second time. And it's preventable. Bradley Edwards, who's been on your program, who you introduced, he has been offering to go to the DOJ to help set up the protocols. He said, let me get the other survivors' lawyers in there. And they are not involving them. They'll return an email, but it takes Bradley Edwards barraging the DOJ. And it just shows a total callousness. Meanwhile, they're covering up for the president. They're covering up in terms of at least his embarrassment and not releasing these 3 files that they were forced to release. And they're covering up for people who actually abused these girls.
So millions of Epstein file documents still not released, which just, I assume, means your crusade on this continues.
It continues because it's personal, because these survivors have sat in my office, they've sat in Thomas Massie's office, they were abused, they were raped, and they want justice. And the half of the files that are out proves to the country that what we were talking about was not a hoax, that some of the most powerful people are involved. And the worst stuff is still in these files, that the names of some of these people, which have been scrubbed by Donald Trump's FBI. But look, here's why people shouldn't give up hope, because when people cover it, when journalists make a big deal of it, then suddenly Pam Bondi relents and they would get 10,000 more files, 40,000 more files. So we need to just be on this until we can get a judge to order the release of the rest of the files.
And of course, Donald Trump launches wars in Venezuela or Iran to try to deflect from this, among other reasons. The Pam Bondi testimony that I just referred to, I know people in the audience out there are thinking, oh, okay, so the Attorney General is going to come to the committee and do her usual insult comedian bad act in front of your committee. Is that the way it's going to go?
It won't. And it's so disrespectful seeing her do that when survivors are there. But this time she's not going to be able to go just insult me or insult Robert Garcia. She's going to be deposed, and she's going to be...
So a deposition is completely different from what people have grown accustomed to as a congressional hearing with the Attorney General.
Completely different, because the people asking her the questions are going to be qualified lawyers. They're going to get an hour, not 5 minutes. She's going to have to answer those questions under oath, not just respond with barbs at members of Congress. And this is why it was so important what Nancy Mace, myself, Robert Garcia did. I mean, we got 24-19. We won that vote to subpoena Pam Bondi to be under oath. And she's going to have to explain, why were these 3 files covered up that involved Donald Trump? Why are half the files still redacted and not being shown to the American people? Why was there the prison transfer for Ghislaine Maxwell? There's a lot she has to explain. And by the way, the next president can prosecute her. Now, maybe Trump preemptively pardons her, but Trump is not known to stick around with people who are political liabilities.
Yeah, there's real legal liability for her in under oath testimony on this matter.
And it's finally going to be forcing her to answer the questions. They ask her, why is the file still redacted? She says, well, Thomas Massie, you don't know what you're talking about. Now she's going to have to answer yes or no under oath. It is one of the most significant moments when we're going to get her under oath.
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And coming up, we'll take a look at Donald Trump's new choice for Secretary of Homeland Security after his first choice has gone wherever she's gone. That's next. Speaking of war profiteering, Donald Trump's choice to be the next Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma, has made some interesting stock trades this year. The Daily Beast reports 5 days before military action in Venezuela, Mullin purchased substantial positions in defense contractor RTX Corp and oil giants Chevron and ConocoPhillips, according to Capital Trades. Based on those federal disclosure filings and publicly available share price data, Mullin made up to $35,000 from the trio of positions by Monday. Senator Mullin is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee with access to non-public information about U.S. military operations. After buying Chevron, Markwayne Mullin then publicly urged others to buy the stock he already bought without publicly disclosing that he bought that stock. Senator Mullin said this on CNBC.
I mean, look at Chevron. We've had relationships in Venezuela for years. The problem was under Maduro, it really became uninvestable. Once that stabilizes, every major company is going to be buying to get involved in that area because there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for the company and for their shareholders.
Senator Mullin's confirmation hearing will be in the Senate Homeland Security Committee, which is chaired by Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. The Daily Beast reports during a breakfast in Tulsa, Oklahoma last month, Mullin voiced his frustration with Senator Rand Paul. Rand Paul's a freaking snake, Mullin said. Joining us now is Garrett Graff, journalist and historian who covers federal law enforcement. Garrett, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So first of all, is Markwayne Mullin an upgrade from Kristi Noem?
Not at all. And I think that this is one of the things that it's easy to look past because I think the whole country is taking a deep breath of relief that Kristi Noem is out atop DHS. However, it's worth pointing out that Markwayne Mullin is not in any way qualified to actually be the secretary of the nation's third largest cabinet department. And in fact, not only is he unqualified, he is underqualified even in comparison to Kristi Noem or even Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon. That he is someone who has no government experience, he has no law enforcement experience, he has no military experience, he has no intelligence experience, and in fact has never worked in the private sector outside of his own family businesses.
And his government experience is just the United States Senate, where he gets to manage a Senate staff, which for the state of Oklahoma is not that big. It's less than 50 people.
Exactly. And that even in the House, where he served several terms and then came to the Senate, he has never served on the Homeland Security Committee in either body. And I think, you know, in some ways it may seem old fashioned, even in the Trump administration, to be talking about competency or management experience. But I think it should still matter to us whether the people who are being nominated for these jobs have even the most basic set of qualifications necessary to do them.
There are a bunch of ways to go in the Senate confirmation hearing, including looking back at the Kristi Noem operation there and all the various conflicts of interest and all of the favorable contract deals that were given. The Democrats could focus on that in this confirmation hearing. But what are the range of ways to go in this confirmation hearing as you see it?
Yeah, to me, I think there's obviously a lot of opportunity to look backward. But the thing that we should really try to stay focused on is what's still to come. And I think Americans are misunderstanding the scale of the immigration spending still to come that has come out of this Republican funding surge last summer. I had a piece in the recently about the construction and procurement budget for Customs and Border Protection. It is a number around $54 billion for this year, which is a number so large that it is actually larger than the entire annual defense budgets of all but 5 European countries. And the money that is still available to be spent in that budget right now is equal to the entire GDP of the country of Estonia.
And that's for the operation of these warehouses where they expect to store thousands of people?
That's an entirely other budget. That is all in ICE's detention budget, still tens of billions of dollars to spend there as well. And I think we should be paying real close attention and pushing Markwayne Mullin as the nominee about what oversight is going to be available and expected and what level of transparency about how that money is being spent is going to be available to members of Congress going forward. This is really, to me, one of the last major opportunities that Congress has to change the trajectory of our immigration spending.
And we've seen Committee Chairman Rand Paul has said that he sees no legal justification for the shooting and killing of Renee Good or Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. So we can expect something from the chairman on that.
Absolutely. And again, we're really just seeing the beginning of the effects of these new hires at ICE and CBP and the new construction budgets and the new detention facilities. To me, there's plenty more scandals still to come this year, and that's all going to end up on Markwayne Mullin's plate.
Garrett Graff, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Anytime.
Tonight's last word, a special last word, is next. In dramatic testimony, Alexander Butterfield revealed to the world that President Richard Nixon's criminal conspiracy inside the White House was all on tape.
Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President?
I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
Mr. Butterfield, as far as you know from your own personal knowledge, from 1970 then until the present time, all of the President's conversations in the offices mentioned and on the telephones mentioned were recorded. As far as you know.
That's correct.
And as far as you know, those tapes are still available.
As far as I know, but I've been away for 4 months, sir.
I have no further questions.
Alexander Butterfield delivered that testimony in July 1973 to the Watergate Committee and changed the course of history. The president was recorded in his own voice committing crimes in the Oval Office. Richard Nixon resigned the presidency in disgrace and received a pardon from his successor, President Gerald Ford. As a result of the investigation of the president, 48 Nixon administration officials were found guilty of crimes. Alexander Butterfield joined this program in July 2022 after he watched former White House staffer Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony about the Trump White House given to the January 6th committee. Alexander Butterfield praised Cassidy Hutchinson and said this about his historic testimony.
What nobody knew, I felt it was my responsibility and that I was the person who was told to put in this system.
Alexander Butterfield died today at his home in San Diego. He leaves his wife, Kim, his 2 daughters, 8 grandchildren, and 13 great-grandchildren. Alexander Butterfield was 99 years old. That is tonight's last word.